Welcome to the Fredericton Arts Alliance Mayoral Election Forum 2021. First, I would like to thank Tony Merzetti, our treasurer, for the technical arrangements to let us have this forum virtually and online. I would also like to thank the city for its continued support for the Fredericton Arts Alliance. Its ongoing contribution to arts news enables Fredericton citizens to know how much is going on in this city and to connect with our rich cultural life, even in these days of COVID-19 shutdown. If you don't already get arts news, sign up on the FAA website, frederictonartsalliance.ca. It's a free electronic newsletter arriving in your email inbox every week. If you aren't getting it yet, the links are on our website, frederictonartsalliance.ca. That website is soon to be updated, again with support from the city, and the arts news will appear in a new and improved calendar format, making it easier to get to the events you don't want to miss. This is taking longer than we expected, but that is probably a fact of life with things technical. And the city has also been supportive of our annual Summer Artist in Residence program, which we greatly appreciate. But the reason you're here this evening, the Fredericton Arts Alliance Virtual Online Mayoral Election Forum. It has been a work in progress, and I hope we've worked out most of the bugs. Please bear with us if technology becomes a problem. I want to thank the candidates for agreeing to spend time with us discussing the arts. I appreciate everyone who puts their name forward in an election to represent their neighbors at City Hall. It is that commitment, coming from a wide range of political perspectives, that makes democracy work. The FAA has held a forum for every election since 1999. For federal elections, we invite the candidates for the Fredericton riding. In provincial elections, we ask each party to name a candidate, preferably from the Fredericton area, to represent them on our stage. For municipal elections, we ask the mayoral candidates to talk to us. And I want to thank everyone who's tuned in via YouTube to listen to what the mayoral candidates have to say. Your presence tells them they cannot ignore the arts in Fredericton. While electronic, this event is taking place on the unsurrendered and unceded traditional lands of the Wolastoqey. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Wolastoqey, Maliseet, a Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy title, and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. We recognize and acknowledge these facts, and also that there are important issues involving our First Nations communities that are also before voters in this election. Before we get into the details of the forum, we have to determine a speaking order. Normally, this would be done by drawing names or numbers out of a hat, but with all of us in different rooms, that is not so easy to do. As an alternative, I've written the numbers 1 through 4 on slips of paper, inserted one into each of 4 handmade pottery bottles. We will ask the candidates to choose a bottle, and the number on the slip of paper in that bottle will determine the speaking order for opening remarks and the reverse speaking order for closing remarks. So I will now hold up the 4 little bottles so the candidates can see them. Take your pick.
I'll take the blue on the farthest most, what would be my right, your left.
This one? No.
Yes.
This one?
Yes, that one, your left. Yeah.
Okay. Drew, you are speaking first.
Wow. Well, do I get to keep the bottle too?
No. No.
You artists always holding on to your art.
Good chance, though.
Who's next?
I like the asymmetrical one on the other end.
This little guy?
Yeah, the other was the one on the far end, but it doesn't matter.
Oh,
yeah,
this one.
That's pretty cool.
Okay. I actually made all of these bottles.
Awesome.
Now I see why I'm not getting it.
Number 4.
Thanks. Great. Thank you.
Mike, Kate.
I'll take the one on your far left, Katie.
The little squatty guy?
Yeah, what is it?
It's a small porcelain handmade pot.
Okay,
Mike is number 3.
number 3.
Kate, this leaves you with,
That's great. That's fine with me.
by process of elimination,
Perfect.
number 2.
Love it.
Okay, so Suzanne, you've got the list all recorded, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, that determines the initial speaking order, and the closing remarks will be in reverse order. It also determines which question each candidate will have the first shot at. However, the ordering of the questions will be alphabetically by the surname of candidates, again, to ensure fairness. I think that almost completely covers my introductory role in this forum. My one last task is to introduce our moderator, Suzanne Alexander, publisher at Goose Lane Editions. Suzanne has been gracious enough to moderate these panels for quite a few years now, and we truly appreciate her willingness and her skills at keeping the evening running smoothly. Without further ado, Suzanne, it's over to you and to the candidates, and I'll back away for a bit. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Katie. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. And I particularly wish to welcome the candidates for the mayor of the city of Fredericton who've agreed to participate in this election forum. And welcome to all of you who have chosen to join us via YouTube. C'est la deuxième fois que nous avons organisé un débat virtuel sur la politique culturelle pendant une période électorale. Bien qu'il puisse sembler comme un vieux chapeau pour certains d'entre vous, assurez-vous que nous sommes encore néophytes dans ce domaine. Thus far, during this election, there has been little discussion of the role of local government in the support of the arts. Tonight, we've asked your local candidates to focus on this very issue, and it will be your opportunity to listen and to gather information to help you make an informed decision. As moderator for this evening's forum, let me first begin with a few instructions. Candidates, please ensure that your camera and your mic is turned on. Please also ensure that the chat menu is visible on your desktop or your laptop or your iPad, since we will be using it periodically to alert you when you are nearing the end of your allocated speaking time. And on that note, I'm asking each of you to respect the allocated time and to ensure that you answer all questions directly and succinctly. To begin the evening, I will introduce each candidate in the order that they will be presenting their opening remarks. Candidates, a reminder that you will each be given 3 minutes for your opening remarks. Once these remarks have concluded, I will be asking prepared questions assigned to each candidate by the random draw. These questions were prepared by the Fredericton Arts Alliance and circulated in advance to the candidates so that they could be well prepared for this evening. The candidate who has been assigned the question will be given 2 minutes to reply. Other candidates, should they wish to reply, will then be given 1 minute to agree, to disagree, or to speak to the question, and it will be your choice. We'll then move on to the next question. Following the initial question and answer session, we will, of course, as usual, open the forum for questions from those listening in, and you can present them in the language of your choice. Should you wish to ask a question, please identify yourself and type your question into the chat menu. As time permits, we'll do our best to direct your question to one of the candidates. Après cette première période de séance de questions et de réponses, vous aurez l'occasion de poser vos propres questions dans la langue de votre choix. Si vous souhaitez poser une question, veuillez vous identifier et mettre votre question dans le chat. Nous ferons de notre mieux pour adresser votre question à un des candidats si le temps le permet. At the conclusion of this evening's event, we'll be giving each candidate 2 minutes to offer concluding remarks in the reverse speaking order of the opening remarks. And now that we all know how to proceed, here are your candidates for the mayor of the city of Fredericton. And the candidate who is speaking first is Drew Brown. Drew is a political rookie, as he calls himself, but he promises to be a candidate of action. He's lived in Fredericton for 28 years, 6 of which he worked as a cab driver. He's particularly concerned about homelessness, the deterioration and availability of affordable housing, and issues of poverty, including those that affect the working poor. In his platform, he has also emphasized the importance of the city's downtown and getting the job done, particularly on infrastructure projects such as the Playhouse and the Fredericton Indoor Pool. Following Drew is Kate Rogers. Kate was born and raised in Fredericton, and as she likes to say, her roots run deep, from Devon to Rabbit Town, from the town plat to the hill. She began her career by working in her family's residential property business, where she says she learned the value of a dollar and was taught that no person was better than another. Kate Rogers holds an MA in political science from UNB and has built her career in arts administration, community development, and in policy research. She is the executive director of the Fredericton Community Foundation and has served as the executive director of both the Charlotte Street Arts Center and the Brunswick Crafts Council. She's also been the managing director of the Brunswick Social Policy Network. Kate Rogers was first elected to City Council in May 2012 and has since served as chair of the Community Services Committee and the Arts and Culture Committee. In her platform, she indicates that she's interested in building a more vibrant, affordable, and healthy city. The next candidate is Mike O'Brien. Mike O'Brien's official biography states that there are 3 common threads that underlie his interest in serving as mayor: a lifetime of public service, a visionary insight, and a compassion for the less advantaged. In his professional life, Mike has worked as an engineer, overseeing efficiency innovations at General Motors, Connors Brothers, and NB Liquor. Over the years, he has served on numerous boards from the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce to school and hospital committees. He was the founding chair of Fredericton's Affordable Housing Committee and later chair of the Community Action Group on Homelessness. He served as a city councillor on city council from 2001 to 2016, when he served as chair of the Finance and Administration Committee and oversaw the adoption of the city's long-term fiscal plan. And finally, Corinne Hersey grew up in Marysville, and she is a viller, as she likes to say. She holds a BA in sociology from St. Thomas University and a master's degree in education from UNB, both of which she obtained as a mature student, a lesson to all of us. She has lived and worked in Sweden, where she studied the literacy rates of children, and in China, where she tutored children in preparation for entry into schools in the UK. She has worked with Literacy New Brunswick and the National Adult Literacy Database. Today, she teaches sociology at St. Thomas University. And in her platform, she emphasizes the importance of listening to and acting on community voices. And now for opening remarks, and I will be quiet. Et maintenant pour les remarques préliminaires. We'll begin with Drew.
Good evening, all Frederictonians and members of the Fredericton Art Alliance. That was a very good introduction. I would add that I am, by education and trade and training, also a holder of a Bachelor of Science in Forestry and a forester who worked in that domain for approximately 14 years. So I have definitely a different approach to certain systems. I would also like to give a little more background about myself. I am basically the son of a nurse and the son of a doctor. So because of that upbringing, I'm very people focused, and I really believe in people and being a good neighbor. Systems are great. It's what we do as human beings to try and organize ourselves into systems, but I think we always have to keep in mind that systems are supposed to serve people and not the other way around. So as mayor, I'm interested in trying to improve what we have in Fredericton, particularly in our housing and homelessness and heritage situations. I also am interested in looking at the infrastructure that we'd like to add. Now, I feel that one of the things we're struggling with in Fredericton now is that we're looking for partnerships that are not going to be forthcoming. So I believe the city has to become more of its own active and activist. And that involves, if we have to take the lead and do things, I believe that is what the city should do. Collaboration is great, but I do not believe at this present time we're going to be able to get partnerships until perhaps for a number of years, until all these various things that are challenging our government pass into a less challenging state. And that's my opening remarks.
Thank you. And now I'll pass the mic over to Kate Rogers.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kate Rogers, and I'm running to be your mayor. I'm so pleased to be with all of you tonight. As some of you may know, I'm one of the founding members of the Fredericton Arts Alliance. There were a group of us working here in the arts, and we wanted to form an advocacy group to promote the benefits, social, economic, cultural, of supporting the arts. And the first event that we held as an organization was a debate for candidates running in the 1999 provincial election. It was held at the Beaverbrook Art Gallery. Suzanne, I think you were the moderator. My understanding is that FAA has held a debate at every subsequent election, and I am thrilled to finally be a participant in one. My experience in the arts is vast, from growing up singing and acting in school and university productions to participating in local Gilbert and Sullivan shows and singing in numerous choirs. I have been an active arts volunteer and arts professional. In fact, it was at this first debate that Brad Green promised, if elected, he would turn over the old Charlotte Street School to the arts community for $1. He was true to his word, and I was part of the group of volunteers who acquired the old school and transformed it into a vibrant community arts center. 10 years later, I returned and became the executive director of the Charlotte Street Arts Center and worked with the board to initiate the expansion, making the center accessible to all. In addition to working in the arts, I've taught, owned a business, worked in nonprofit administration, community development, policy, research, and advocacy. And through all my work, I've acquired the skills to lead. The nonprofit sector is expected to do much with very little, and the only way to get the job done is through building relationships with others, being collaborative and creative, particularly with the dollar, particularly when working in the arts sector. For the past 9 years, I've represented the people of Ward 11 as their city councillor. I'm known for speaking out for my constituents and raising issues that matter to Fredericton residents. I've always been very engaged in my council work. I've chaired and participated in numerous committees and boards and commissions. Some of the highlights include my involvement in the formation of the city's Arts and Culture Advisory Committee and its leadership on the development of the Culture Plan, which has driven so much of the cultural activity we now see in our city, from the public sculptures, artist in residence programs, funding for programs and festivals, only to name a few. In my second term, I was appointed deputy mayor, and I initiated strategic visioning for city council. I've also, another highlight is I spoke out about the lack of women involved in municipal decision-making, and I led the ad hoc committee on gender diversity that brought recommendations to council, which have since been adopted. And not quite a year ago, I was named chair of the Affordable Housing Committee, which considers a whole spectrum of housing. I'm running for mayor because I think the city needs a new voice and a new style of leadership. Fredericton is growing by over 1,000 people per year, and I believe that growth must be matched with our ability to house and care for people, nurture the environment, and support the businesses that drive our economy. This is all to create a city that's more vibrant, more affordable, and more healthy.
Thank you, Kate. And our next speaker is Mike O'Brien.
Thank you. And I'm proud to be a member of this alliance as well. I hope I paid my membership dues this year. 5 years ago, Fredericton put their faith in my vision and leadership for our city. And together we've achieved so much. We've maintained the lowest municipal property tax rate of all New Brunswick cities. We've seen remarkable job growth and prosperity, population growth. We've become a national leader in climate change adaptation. And we've increased our investment and support of the vibrant arts and culture sector. We have risen as an exciting and culturally rich city. And I'm proud of all these accomplishments. I was raised here, and Ann and I raised our 4 daughters here. Community involvement is my passion, as is serving you at City Hall. 15 years as a proud Northside councillor, and the last 5 as your mayor. As I previously mentioned, some of the accomplishments that we've achieved together, so let me add a few details. In my term, $543 million in development has occurred, and the lion's share has been private sector investment. When the private sector shows that much confidence in our city and creates jobs, you know you're on the right track. 5 years ago, I promised that this very group that the city would increase support and support and funding to the arts and culture sector. And we have delivered on that. Tourism has set economic activity records each year, including 2018 when we did $343 million in economic activity. We've been selected by the Canadian Federation of Municipalities as one of Canada's showcase cities for our work in climate adaptation. And working with all our partners, we've been extremely successful in protecting the city and its residents and all our businesses from the COVID pandemic. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are some examples of our collective successes and the vision and leadership I bring to City Hall every single day. As for my platform, it's our visionary 25-year growth strategy. We adopted it 3 years ago, and it's paying dividends, as evidenced by some of the stats I gave you. There's no need to head off in a new intangible style or costly direction. We listened to what the public said they wanted, we spoke to experts, and we developed a strategy. It has a very strong focus on making our city culturally rich, it is visionary, and it works. But there's always more to do. I'll always be laser focused on keeping our tax rate flat to support our residents, families, businesses, seniors, our cultural sector, and to stimulate growth. As we just released our new community energy plan, and with the goal of reducing our emissions by 80% over the base year. And I know this city, and I know we can do it, and we're going to knock this one out of the park. I've reached out to the Departments of Health and Social Development to discuss a partnership to develop a Fredericton-centric mental health strategy with a focus on addressing the mental health and addiction issues that are driving our street homelessness. So tonight you're going to no doubt hear about the need for a change, and I submit that my leadership, vision, and extensive experience and collaboration skills is exactly what we need to recover from this pandemic, to expand on our great successes, and to tackle our greatest challenges. And as your mayor, I'm going to work as hard for you as you work for you and your family to create an even brighter city, a brighter future for us all. So on May 10th, I kindly ask for your support and your vote. Thank you. Merci, William.
Thank you very much, Mike. And now the mic goes to Corinne Hersey.
Hi, I'm Corinne Hersey, and I'm really excited about this debate because I guess quorum. I remember the first time I ever went to a grand art gallery, and of course it was the Beaverbrook Art Gallery, and now that I've been able to travel, I've been to many, and it is one of the most important features of any city. I think that what I value about Fredericton is the diversity that is in the city and that we can expand upon diversity in culture. So when we see the opportunities that all of our different buildings give us, all of our open spaces give us, then I just see opportunity for those to expand into the more grassroots types of art and culture that can become more evident in the city. Some of that we saw just this past year with the murals. So what my involvement in the arts is that my father painted the walls many times because I kept coloring on them. My school teachers took my crayons, and I took my first art course in '72 and then began teaching. And I think my biggest moment was having paintings accepted into the Beaverbrook Art Gallery. So it is a passion of mine. It's something I always do. And of course, right now, don't have time enough to do it. But many artists in the city are great friends, and I believe in the importance of the arts in the city. The reason that I chose to run for mayor wasn't because of challenges I saw regarding the arts, even though I know that there is a conversation around the new Performing Arts Center, but because of my involvement in it. And seeing my involvement in the city and seeing challenges that I saw in other places and hearing what the people were saying and were feeling they were not being listened to. Or if they were listened to, then votes would go through which would indicate they weren't listened to, but it just didn't seem to be adding up. So I'm feeling that the need in the city is for more transparency and openness. That's what I'm hearing from the people I talk to. Of course, with affordable housing and homelessness, a sector that I work with kind of on the ground and at the grassroots, more food security. So many people are hungry, and the use of our food banks has doubled at least, especially during a pandemic. And inclusive type of community building, which the city is working on, but I see that we have a need to do even more in that area. So those are some of the reasons that I've chosen to run, and I hope I can expand on those tonight. And yeah, I'm just very excited about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corinne. And now we're going to turn to some questions. Thank you to all of you for giving us an overview of your platform, but now we'd like to dig a little bit deeper and to talk a little bit about some issues that are of particular interest to people within the arts community in Fredericton. These questions, again, as I mentioned earlier, have been circulated so that you've had time to think about it. The first question is directed to Drew Brown. Drew, City Council has identified replacing the failing playhouse as an infrastructure priority for years now. Council has repeatedly stated that to move it forward, the financial participation of the federal and provincial governments is required. How important is this project to you, and how do you think the city should proceed? And you have 2 minutes to reply.
Thank you. I, like a lot of people in Fredericton, initially thought the Playhouse was something that should have been lower on the priority list of infrastructure projects. However, after having talked with Tim Yerxa, I now believe that that project is very important. The downtown economy and the direct and indirect jobs that benefit from a Playhouse are quite substantial. The numbers are all there. It's very important for us to recognize without the Playhouse, we're going to create quite a hole in our downtown economy. So as mayor, I feel that the city has to find a site to build the Playhouse while continuing to operate the present Playhouse. I think, unfortunately, the current council and mayor missed an opportunity when the Centennial building became available. I think that would have been an excellent purchase, certainly, because at least that way it would guarantee a site. I'm all for tangible results. I want to see a site. I don't necessarily have to wait for the province or the federal governments to say, we're going to give you money. I'd like to have the site. Then I could turn to the provinces and the federal government if I could persuade them and say, well, I have a site, spend the money, let's get this thing built.
Thank you. Do any other candidates wish to respond to that? I'm going to use my screen, Kate. Okay.
Okay. So I'll respond. So am I in your screen? Is that what you're indicating?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. So I just would add the Playhouse replacing the Performing Arts Center is really critical. 1 in 4 Frederictonians actually attend the Playhouse each year, and they provide many programs to make it accessible so that everyone's able to attend, whether it's a pay what you can or through the school programs. So it's an important piece. It's an important piece of arts infrastructure in the city. It's important that it be replaced because it's part of our asset management. The city owns that building, and feasibility studies have proven it's the most expensive building that we have to operate. If we renovate it, we reduce the number of seats available to a point that it's no longer feasible financially, its operational budget. So its replacement is needed. And I just, I think that the city's been clear that we think that it's a priority. Where we've lacked is really in the leadership to get others to come to the table. We didn't approach it potentially in the right way. We didn't do a design up front to show people what it was that they were signing on to. And we weren't clear in our expectations. It's time we're working on that design right now. It took many years to come to the point where council agreed upon putting the funding forward to do the design. Now that design work is being done, we will have something we can take to partners to get them excited about it too. It's 1 in 4 Fredericton residents, but when you look at the greater Fredericton region, actually over 50% of households attend the Playhouse. So it's a much loved treasure. The city council hasn't been effective enough in selling it and promoting it. And I think it's been the approach, and we need to take a new approach and make sure that we get a replacement for that, because every vibrant city has a performance venue.
Any other candidates like to speak to that? Can I ask you to raise your hand? No other? Corinne?
Yeah. We're looking for 28 million minimum between the province and the feds. And of course, I think that if the city's going to put up 14 million and the foundation's thinking they can raise about 3 million, then we're still trying to get 28 million out of the two provincial governments. To present them with a plan is certainly a good thing, and being able to move it forward. But I think that there still has to be that we have to realize that if we're moving forward with this, we have to be looking at other options, because it's not very likely, from my understanding of talking with people who have already been very active in approaching the province and the federal government, that they're not going to come on board. So I would suggest that we look towards foundations, other foundations to contribute, and also to looking at where money is already being spent, and perhaps move some of that money around so that we can get the Performing Arts Center underway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next question. And Corinne, this is for you. The redevelopment of Officer Square has generated a great deal of discussion, if not controversy.
Just excuse me just for a second, Suzanne.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. So you carry on. I thought we were all going to answer the question.
Okay.
So that's why I never spoke.
I will go back.
My apologies.
And that was my fault. I wasn't clear. I was waiting for someone to signal whether you're going to speak.
I thought everybody spoke for 3 minutes, and then you could rebut. So I apologize. So
okay. So Mike, I'll let you speak to that question.
Okay, I will speak then. Okay. So yeah, it is our number one priority. It always has been, and it is a challenge. With we struggled as a council at the beginning to get solidly behind it. Not that theoretically we weren't behind it, but the cost, the design, where it was going to be, we looked at a couple locations, and then finally settled on the current location. So then we could start a design. It is a big ask, and unfortunately, a lot of the community, certain sectors of the arts community has gotten behind it, but we haven't been able to find that. There's the political voice. I've been out in front of it a lot of times, and the Playhouse Board has, and some people, but we haven't been able to find that real strong community voice that wants to drive it as well. And the provincial, federal politicians do respond to a big movement. And after a while, if it's just the politicians talking about it and say the Playhouse Board, that's not enough. So we have to really try to engage the community to get more behind this. We've tried, we haven't been able to get that traction. And I don't think any of us can really figure out why that is. When it goes forward, and it will go forward. We just have to be extremely diligent that we stay on top of the architects. I'm an engineer, but architects, we can have a scope creep. So we have to be very diligent to make sure that the design is what we've asked for. And then when the construction starts, we have to be extra diligent. I've got a project management background. I'm not going to be the project manager, but we have to be on top so that the contingency part doesn't get out of control, and we can deliver what people expect, a quality super spot for the next few generations at the right cost for our city. So,
thank you, Mike.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Suzanne, I just wanted to point out that
I'm sorry. You've had your opportunity. You can only have one opportunity. Oh. That's it. The next question is directed to Corinne Hersey. And this is about Officer Square. The redevelopment of Officer Square has generated a great deal of discussion. What is your vision for the eventual use of this important civic space? What constraints should the city be under when it comes to the development of this formerly protected historic site?
Officer Square is the very point where I decided to run. There were a lot of things that I was looking at in the city, but when I saw the continuation of what was happening in Officer Square, it just moved me to the point where we were losing so much heritage and so much history, and it was being disregarded. It could not be brought back. So you can put certain items back, but you can't bring it to what it was. But the vision that I see for it is to stop what is going on right now. We do not need a skating oval. We do not need it in that space. We also need for the space to be that representation of a shared cultural heritage. So the heritage that was evident in that space needs to be brought back in the ways that, whatever ways we can. We cannot bring back the trees that were cut down, but what we can do is to get the type of natural infrastructure in there. Drew will tell you how many trees he can plant, but we can get those trees in there so that we get that beautiful space back. I think that it should go back to the people. And when I mean back to the people, of course, we can't legally sign it back over to the people. That's not what I'm meaning. But what I am meaning is that the people are engaged in that space again to recreate it into the beautiful space that it should be. And we have the expertise in Fredericton. We have the ability to design and plant and make that a gorgeous, beautiful garden space, a green space, a comfortable space. And if the Performing Arts Center is right across the street, we don't need another great big stage in Officer Square. We need it to be the Calathumpian type stage, the performing little stage that it was, and to just let people do again with that space as they will. I would stop everything that I possibly could.
Thank you, Corinne. And we're going to go in the opposite direction for the responses now. And Mike O'Brien, I'm going to let you respond first.
Thank you. I remember the space very well back in the 70s when there was a lot of trees there that the province removed. And then there was a massive amount of concrete leading all the way up to the fountain that was in the middle. The lawn really didn't exist there. People have this vision that it was a big space. It was a lot of concrete. There was a JFK memorial that took up a lot of space, and it was very drastically underutilized. And even today, before the renovations began, it was very much underutilized. We have a vision that it would be a 12-month space for people to use, 12 months of the year. And unfortunately, it's not complete yet. But there's a good reason for that. We're doing the very necessary Indigenous consultations. And when those are complete, they will take whatever course that takes. It may reshape the vision of it, it may not. But then we'll be able to carry on. And then we'll have this wonderful space that the lawn that's there now, whether the skating oval remains or not, is going to be larger than the lawn that's there now, the new lawn. So whenever people show the vision of what they think it's going to be like, they show a front corner of it where there's paver stones, where another little stage will be. It's going to be a lot more green than people are putting out there. The wall is going to be completed within another month. Trees are going to be planted along the Regent Street face, and 35 trees will be there. So to replace the 19 that were taken down. So and it'll be a spot where people can gather. It'll be historically significant, and it'll be a lifeline for a lot of our downtown merchants as well. So that's the vision. We'll see where it goes once all the consultations are done.
Kate?
Yes, so Officer Square, which is the heart of our downtown and a much loved space. I feel that we went a little overboard in the design. I think a lot of us, there was a lot of excitement. We did do quite a bit of public consultation. And then it seems like we put all the ideas on the table into a plan. And then when we didn't continue the conversation with the public, because my sense of the public view is that we did a bit too much. It's probably what I hear second most when I go door to door. And so my suggestion is that we hit a little bit of reset. I think that we do return the beautiful green space, lawn space. Clearly, we do need to have some sort of stone pavers around the square to keep the formation of the square, also for mobility reasons. But I don't think we should go overboard in the concrete. There's quite a bit in that design, and I think we could scale back on that. I think we should replant some of the trees. And I think that we should erect some sort of a stage. And I'm not sure if it needs to be permanent or if potentially it's a portable stage. I know there's a desire for it to be a roofed stage. It is a much loved area where people like to attend live performance, the beautiful concert series that's gone on there my whole entire life. There's a desire that kind of activity and vibrancy maintain in that space. And I think that it should. But most of all, I believe that we should be honoring its historic and cultural significance. And I feel that the plan went a little bit overboard and got away from that. So I think we hit reset, admit that maybe we got it wrong, got a bit too excited, scale it back a bit, but still keep it this beautiful, natural, vibrant space in our downtown where people can go and enjoy.
And Drew?
Well, thank you. Yes, Corinne's right. I know every species of tree that was removed from Officer Square. And to be honest, when everyone talks about trees, I know they think, well, it's something that has leaves. there are certain trees we want to see back in Officer Square. We want to see oaks back in Officer Square. We want to see elms back in Officer Square. Officer Square could definitely probably support maples, which are a little more environmentally sensitive. One of my visions for Officer Square is that I'm not a fan of a rink nor a big stage. I like the stage, as Corinne said. The Calathumpian stage was a good sized stage. I saw a lot of the Harvest and Jazz Blues Festival things being held there, and I thought it was a perfect. The venue worked out very well. One thing I've had for a vision is that I used to love, and I still do like the art of Ned Bear, although I believe he's passed away. And I see like a nice, what I would like to see in consultation with the native group in St. Mary's, to see if they have an artistic vision for some sort of centerpiece that would go in Officers Square. I think that would be great. We had Lord Beaverbrook, and he certainly is an important figure. However, he's not the only important figure that figures into the history of New Brunswick. The Indigenous peoples were the first peoples, and as Katie's introduction said, they were the ones who said, "We'll be your friends, and we'll stand by you in trouble." And I think that has to be recognized in that space.
Thank you. The next question is for Michael Bryan. And it's a question which we think you should be able to reply. As mayor, how would you propose the City of Fredericton report to its citizens on delivering on the goals and recommendations of its 2003 arts policy and its 2014 cultural plan?
Well, those committees report through to our development committee. Actually, it's got a new name, Economic Vitality. And I think that those two committees should report. It doesn't have to be every 3 months, but at the halfway mark, every 6 months through this committee, which is a public committee, broadcast, it's webcast, it's reported by the media, it's open to the public. And that way they can give us the updates on their targets, their goals, how they're doing, challenges that they're still facing, whether it's staffing wise or dollar wise. And the council can hear that, and the community can hear it. I think on an annual basis, they should report to our city council. There was recently just a city council presentation by the cultural committee on many different aspects of what's going on in the community. And that's a good vetting that, again, that'll be broadcast on Rogers and as such. So I guess that's the way. It was a city initiated, community driven plan with city input. But again, a reporting mechanism for every 6 months at the committee level and every year at the council level. And after that, it's up to the council representative that's on the committee to come to to the committee or to staff at any time they're having any challenges, to try to allay any fears that are going on during the year at any one time. So I think that kind of reporting mechanism will be enough to be able to get all the issues out in front of everybody, and in front of the elected officials, and in front of the public and the media. So,
thank you. Corinne, do you have a response to that?
I think I do believe that although if there does have to be some sort of reporting done or reporting back to, then there should be enough autonomy within the committee itself to feel that they're not being necessarily monitored or watched or those sorts of things. So I'm on a funding committee right now, and the reporting back takes more work than the actual work we're doing. So I think that those sorts of things have to be carefully looked at and not overly reporting, but staying in contact, but more autonomy given to the Arts Alliance.
Thank you. Drew?
Well, I must confess my ignorance to the reporting and the back and forth and this dynamic in the relationship. I would say that it sounds like there's a communication line open, and there's certainly a reporting period that's being followed. I guess if the Arts Alliance is thinking there's something that's not working, as mayor, I'd be certainly willing to see what we can do to make it a more functional working relationship.
Thank you. And Kate?
Thanks. So I think there's some confusion. The Fredericton Arts Alliance is a neutral nonprofit organization. It's the City Arts and Culture Advisory Committee that reports on the culture plan. And the initial work was done with the arts policy in 2003. And essentially the arts policy, it was just developed to reflect the importance, the increasing importance of arts in the city. It wasn't really until the culture plan was adopted that over 10 years later that there was an implementation plan in place for how to enact some of the statements that were laid out in the arts policy. So the culture plan was done. It was prepared through substantial community involvement, consultation, sort of broader public survey, stakeholder engagement, and it was organized around 5 goals, which was integrate arts and culture in everyday life, embrace diversity and support collaboration, encourage sustainability of the arts sector, support the design of great spaces and places, and understand and embrace culture's economic value. And that's right on our website, right in the culture plan. The Arts and Culture Advisory Committee works with this plan and provides annual updates to City Council on the progress to date. There has been substantial progress in a few of the areas. Some we would have liked more. Some do require more funding. Every year, the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee does go to council asking for greater capacity, because now we're really just limited by we have 1 staff person. I'll just say the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee is multi-sectoral. It's a very diverse committee. It needs to be increasingly diverse, as we saw just this past year. There's still more voices we need around that table, but they volunteer a lot of hours and do a lot of work on behalf of the city to push the culture plan forward, and do provide regular updates. And it's really up to council to determine whether or not to take that advice.
Thank you, Kate. And for those of you who are tuning in, I'm just reminding you that if you have questions to ask to any of the mayoral candidates, you can actually place them in the chat on YouTube. And if we have time this evening, we will ask as many as we possibly can to each of the candidates. The last submitted question is from the Fredericton Arts Alliance, is for Kate Rogers, and then the other candidates will in fact be able to respond. The question is as follows. The built architecture of a city reflects its history and its culture over time. Where do you stand on heritage preservation, and how do you see its relationship with the ongoing development of the city?
So I'm a strong advocate of heritage in our city. I think, we're home to hundreds of heritage buildings that contribute very much to the look and to the feel of our city. They give us sort of our unique character. My greatest concern is that City Council has allowed too many of those buildings, too many heritage buildings in our city to be demolished, and needlessly. There could have been another way that we could have done that, another way that we could have worked with developers to encourage the preservation of those buildings, whether it be through revitalization, refurbishment, renovation. It's important for everyone that these properties be revitalized, from the home to building owner to the developer, just to the resident in Fredericton who loves these properties. It's important to have an understanding of how to best approach the projects, because they can be complex, but to be able to approach them in a way that maintains the character, but also introduces new modern day efficiency elements. And we know that through retrofits, that's very possible. We've seen, I always bring up the example of the Roundhouse, and it's shown how a very old building that could have been demolished instead was purchased and revitalized and retrofitted, and is turned into this super cool, fun community space that everyone loves. Fredericton we have our preservation review, we have our heritage area that has properties, and we need to go in front of a preservation review board in order to do work on those properties. But there are a lot of historic buildings in the city that do not fall within that area. And even for that area, we have guidelines, but we don't have design guidelines. And the design guidelines would be helpful, I think, for people when they were doing development. Some people are very nervous to do work on heritage buildings. They're reticent because they don't have a sense of what the expectation is for how it's supposed to look in the end. And if we could do design guidelines, we could be very helpful for people as they're renovating their buildings, so that maybe they don't need to go to a huge expense of an architect. They could just follow these design guidelines. Similarly, a design review committee could also be helpful in doing that. So I think that they're very important, and I think the city can be far more engaged. We're looking at the heritage bylaw, and we're looking at, are there opportunities to incentivize, but there are also simple things we could do just to make it easier for people to love and restore these buildings.
Thank you, Kate. Drew, would you like to respond?
Yes. I thought a lot about the heritage buildings in the downtown and in the plat by the provincial legislature. And my feeling is that the city should look at some of these properties and consider purchasing them. That way, they can purchase them. If they need to renovate or restore them, they can. And once that procedure is done, they could turn around and resell the property. Our real estate market is very hot right now. It wouldn't be perhaps, I think that could be done at very little or perhaps even small profit. And I don't think the city should be afraid of saying, okay, for example, Lamont House by the Lord Beaverbrook Crown Plaza, that building to me should be preserved. I think it could be turned into something. Certainly could be turned back into a single residence occupancy, could be done something else with, but I don't believe it should be destroyed or demolished. And I think that my feeling with the downtown, especially Queen and King, we have to say these are our core buildings, and these core buildings we have to put in either the regulation or, as I say, become the owners of these properties. And then once we fix them up, say, okay, we're selling them, but there's a covenant upon it that you cannot demolish them. So I think we have to be active in, we just can't sit on the sidelines and expect someone to say, okay, well, we'll do our best. I think we have to say some of these things are important enough for us to put our invest in.
Thank you. Corinne, would you like to respond?
Yeah, what I would say is this city council and previous city councils have not been respondent to the heritage in Fredericton. The wrecking ball seems to take down anything they want. And I have watched every council meeting for 2 years. Yes, I have no life. But I have watched them, and I've watched all 12 councillors vote, and Mike, when it's a tie. And so if something is voted on unanimously, then that means that nobody has spoken up to be a cheerleader for heritage. And there are two positions that should be leadership positions, and that is the mayor and the deputy mayors. So I see too much heritage being destroyed. I believe that they should be retrofitted. I've said from the very beginning, we need to save as many as we possibly can, do green buildings, retrofit them, use them as affordable housing or small business spaces, and preserve the heritage. And specifically, yes, downtown, but also we have many communities in the city that have lots of heritage, and whether provincial buildings or whether city buildings, even if they're provincial, if they want to knock them down, they'll sell them at a pretty good dollar. And the city should not be depending on private people to purchase those buildings. So yeah, I'm huge on heritage. My father spent 10 years of his life researching heritage in Marysville, and that's what we need.
And Mike, would you like to respond to this?
Yes, these are challenges that a growing city has. It's easy to say everybody wants to protect everything, but it does come at a cost, and the city has to make decisions all the time on where we spend our money. We spend $1 million putting the package together to save York House, and I can tell you we were very proud of that. But the majority of calls I got after that were from people that were very, very upset about it. We did the right thing, and it didn't get a lot of traction. We purchased the Picaroons building and then sold that at an extreme discount so that the person could develop it. People liked that one because it was different. But we have to we have to bring our new heritage bylaw in that's going to close some of the gaps, that's going to give us some better tools and oversight to react quicker and put an umbrella around things that we don't really have now. But we really have to engage the community more. When the Queen Square area was looked at to be developed as a heritage area, the community pushed back hard. The St. Mary's Ferry area down Jaffrey, St. Mary Street on Fredericton North, I led with staff the community engagement to try to get the community. They resoundingly rejected us. There's great other areas in the community as well. The Dobie area in Devon, some of the South Devon areas. So we got to get the heritage bylaw in. We do have to find a way to incent developers. We have to find a package that we can afford to do that. I think it's very important because it is extremely expensive. But we really have to engage the community to let them know better the value of it so that they will support this easier. So big challenge, but I think we can be up to it.
So that concludes the advanced questions. I should tell all of you that there are a number of questions that have been submitted by people who are listening on YouTube. And I'm going to start with the first one, and we'll work our way through until we essentially run out of time. The first question is submitted by David Watts. And his question, I'm directing this to you, Kate. If you were mayor, would you continue to support locating a performing arts center in the downtown floodplain, where the Playhouse is now, a situation which is destined to become even more serious in the future as a result of climate change? Or would you look for a more reasonable and safer location?
Hell, I think that the person thinks I should say a more reasonable and safer location. Just the way the question is framed. But I will say I do support the Performing Arts Center being in the downtown. When this first came our way, we considered the different locations in the city, and it was determined that that was the best location, mainly because of the way it interacts with the downtown, and how it is. There is sort of a little bit of a cultural precinct in that area, and as well as just even being close proximity to hotels and restaurants and walkability. And there were lots of reasons why the downtown was identified. When we did, I have to say, there was quite a consultative process done with the Performing Arts Center when we were looking out and doing the needs assessment. And I think resoundingly, the response from the greater public was that it should remain in the downtown. And I would support that decision. I certainly understand the challenges of it being in a flood plain. I know that there are mitigations that can be done. There are engineers who work in this field, and that we would do the best to our ability to mitigate and be adaptive in that area. But I do think the downtown is the right place, the right location for the Performing Arts Center.
Would anyone else like to address this question?
Yes, I think the gentleman, I understand his concern. He has to look at the fact that King Street, Queen Street, are basically, they will be impacted by as climate change changes. Yeah, we're going to have to do a lot more to make those buildings more flood resistant. Building it in the downtown only makes sense. And as I said, I wanted to point this out. The current plan for the Playhouse is going to shut down for 3 years, and they're going to rebuild it in its present location, which I think is a mistake. They have to find a site and start building it on that site. And once they've got it built, well, then decommission the old Playhouse and find something to do with that building and property.
Corinne, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I would just say that I know what I understand the concern, because as somebody who sees, development along the riverbank, we know that that is not a good thing. You just can't take down trees and expect water to not flood into the downtown core. I don't understand the expansion onto the art gallery, because that has flooded around it, and they've had to move art from the bottom floor to hang on the ceiling. So there are certainly complications with putting the Playhouse where it is. And unfortunately, that's all flat till you get to the hill. So under my vision of the city, if more development goes up downtown, then we have to ensure that there's nothing built on that riverbank, either side. And we need to put in as many trees, as many shrubs, as many native plants and flowers, where we'd have a really good, strong root system that could help hold back a great deal of the water that comes in, and create a type of a sponge city, it's called, where you make sure you have green roofs, as many plants and things as possible. And even in the winter, of course, when the trees are, bare, the root system is still strong and is still there, but it's real, and we can't pretend that there's not a climate crisis.
Mike?
Well, I'll just echo Kate's comments. It can be designed for it. It's crucial that it stays in our downtown core for all the reasons she articulated. And there's been other buildings built in recent years, the Convention Center, the new Chancery Place, and even the Beaverbrook Art Gallery had some floodproofing in it too that really worked in the last significant flood 3 years ago. So that's where it should be. And the city does have mitigation plans over the next, starting in the short term and the long term, to try to mitigate some of the low-level flooding areas. And but I think the design can be done. It will be done appropriately, and we can locate it in the downtown core.
The next question is from Ian Letourneau, the former poet laureate for the city, and Ian asks, what does the poet laureate position mean to you? And would you commit to inviting the new laureate to read at the beginning of every regular meeting of City Council? And I'm going to ask this question of Drew.
Well, I think it's a good idea to have, before you get into the business of the day, to have a moment of reflection and to perhaps think of, I think the poet laureate plays an important role in that they try to say to council, don't forget about these things. These things are important too. Poetry is important, although as many poets know, it's hard to make a living at. However, it does speak to a need that we have to feel that what we're doing is of I guess of importance, and it's relative to other human beings. It's trying to share a human experience and then have that meeting that follows to try and carry out some of the thoughts that the poet laureate has shared.
Thank you, Drew. Mike?
Well, why does it have to be a poet laureate? Why couldn't it be a story? Why couldn't it be music? Why couldn't it be just a somber moment of reflection? That was the only challenge that we were really having. And when we decided to rethink or relook at the position, we did send it back, and I guess it would be our cultural committee came back with a recommendation that it was not, it didn't need to be changed. It didn't need to be there every month or every meeting. That could be 2 or 3 times a year or at requests. But the more important part was to engage with the community and try to do a kind of a legacy project, as Ian did when he was there. But for some reason, that was that wasn't supported by council, even though it was our own committee recommended it. So I don't think it's required every meeting. I think the fact that we have a poet laureate and we're committed to the position, but does it have to be a poet laureate at every council meeting versus something else? Or is it 3 or 4 times a year? But the fact that we have a poet laureate sends a great message to the community. The more part is that I think the important part about that is that our poet laureate is engaged in the community more so than standing in front of city council. So that's the important factor to me.
Corinne, do you have a response to this?
Yeah, actually, city council should be involved more in the community, and the poet laureate should be in city council every time they meet. I do believe that the council meetings, when we can shift to that type of a structure, should be held in each ward. And I do believe that it's a great place for poets to actually challenge us, for us to the way that we think and things that might make us feel uncomfortable. So I do think it would be, and yes, I would invite them into every meeting.
And Kate?
So initially, when the culture plan was prepared, the recommendation was that there be a cultural laureate and appointed every 2 years. And we went with the poet laureate first because of Fredericton's rich history with poets. And we had Ian was our first, and it was so well loved that he then did start coming to every meeting. I personally enjoyed his participation, and I did find it to be a moment of reflection when Jenna Lynn took over. Similarly, when she read it at each meeting, for me, it was a moment of reflection. And there were times also she was very provocative, which I also appreciated because it was a reflection of what was happening in our community, which is also the role of the arts. So I, on a personal note, really enjoyed having the poet laureate at each meeting. However, I can tell you the background story was it was felt when we looked at the remuneration for that position, there was a sense amongst the committee that it was too demanding to have a person have to come to every meeting. And And it was also felt that we did want there to be more involvement, more of a community project, and maybe that because the investment wasn't that significant, that we should put the priority there. That it wasn't, council didn't support the original suggestion that was brought forward, sent it back, and then the committee came back again with an increased remuneration for the position, which was wonderful. In addition to the fact that if the council has the choice to invite the poet laureate to attend as many times as they want to a council meeting to be remunerated, and additionally that community project will hold. So I feel that we've landed in a better place with it, and I would be a mayor who would want to have a poet laureate there, because I do think it's a very nice way to start the meeting all in a sort of this common mind space.
Thank you. We now have a question from Jason Gendron, and his question is about heritage, again, a heritage question. And I'm going to ask Mike that you can actually respond to this first. What will you do as mayor to ensure that 12,000 years of Wolastoqey history, Acadian, Loyalist, military, and Fredericton's non-renewable cultural resources are not erased during the development process?
Well, I think the Officer Square is a great example. The city is learning as we go, and that's not an excuse, it's just a reality. The Indigenous consultations that are taking place at Officer Square, as they should be, is a great example of how we go forward from here on. There's a process nation to nation. In this case, it's the Wolastoqey Council dealing with the province of New Brunswick. The city is obviously a player in this, but we will we have our input, and we will engage and follow through whatever the final outcomes are. And that's going to happen on any type of project that's along an old riverbank, the historic area. That is the process that, not that it was the first in the province, but it was one of the real first test cases in the city of Fredericton, that the process that should have been happening is now happening. So I think this is going to be a great template going forward, and it's a learning process. We have to rethink how we go about projects, how we consult at the very beginning when we're conceptualizing. We're doing that on the NBX project. We have a vision, but nothing's going to happen until the Indigenous consultations take place and the outcomes are known. So that is, I'm excited about that. It's going to be a mind shift for people, because we're ready to charge ahead and get things done. But we're going to get things done, but it's going to be a new process that we're going to be following. And that's out of respect and as it should be. So that's the way we're going to be. And I'm proud of that. And I'm glad that we're at this point, we're at this space and time right now.
Thank you, Mike. Corinne, would you like to address this?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know why it would take so long for City Council to realize that Indigenous people have to be consulted. And what has happened with the NBX grounds is really calling for consultation, but still making sure that the plans are going through and you're having those plans drawn up. So to consult after you've basically contracted for plans or put out a tender or looking for a visual, I would say not contracted, but looking for a visual to do something with that space, and not have the consultation that is needed, means that the same mistakes are being made as there is with Officer Square. And I can only speak to that because I've spoken with Indigenous people as well who are friends, and was in meetings over a year and a half ago. So I just see, I don't see the city moving forward. But to answer the question of how would I, is first I believe that a permanent position seat, which has never been done before in Canada, should be available on council. So there'd be 12 council members, the mayor, and a seat for an Indigenous representation. They would always be there whenever they chose. They would be present. They would know what is going on, and they would be there behind any closed door meetings. So it wouldn't be a surprise. You're not asking for consultation. You're asking them to be part of the whole process. And those are two very different things. Consulting and being a part of making decisions and making plans is very different. That's what I would do.
Thank you, Corinne. Kate?
Yeah, so well, first and foremost, I'd go into all these projects in the spirit of respecting heritage and respecting our city's very rich history, and also to at the onset, at the forefront, reach out and work with people whose history is being extracted from these locations, and be inclusive in our actions and involve. And there are many people who make up our history and try to and be inclusive and involve those as we're extracting these artifacts, and most notably here and in some of the projects that we're seeing in our downtown, in some of those various sites, not just in our downtown, really throughout the area, but I'm thinking predominantly of the downtown, mainly, I guess, because of Officer Square, but it's certainly the Wolastoqey should be engaged at the onset. We should have engaged them. We will engage them moving forward. And then I think ultimately it's including the folks from the Provincial Archaeological Services. They're the experts. They're certainly able to recognize artifacts, but not do it in exclusion. I think very much inclusive of the other cultures that are being impacted, because they too have an expertise and a knowledge that may be beyond even the people in the archaeological services. So in my mind, it's just this: enter with this spirit of respect for history and heritage, and be very inclusive in our actions and in our treatment of the artifacts.
Thank you, Kate. Andrew, you get to conclude on this one.
Well, I have to commend Corinne on her idea of having an Indigenous representative sitting at the table. I think that is a great idea, and perhaps it should be a position that would have the ability to vote on things before council. I'm not sure how that would work out or how it would be set up. However, it's a very strong, I can't think of any other municipalities that would have that type of representation. And maybe that's where we have to head. And if we headed in that direction, then we could really truly say that Fredericton was doing its part to make sure that the members of the community are, and not just the community, but I mean, also another nation basically living within Fredericton, are there, and they're across the table from us, and we see them and they see us. They know what we're thinking of doing, and they have input into that decision. Because I think I agree with Corinne, consultation after the fact, or after I have 90% of it done, doesn't really sound like you're involving them as a partner.
Thank you. And that concludes, you'll be happy to know, the question period for the evening. And now for the closing remarks. And we're beginning in the opposite order from which we began. And Corinne, you have the floor first.
Well, I am running because I do believe that the direction of the city right now is not respected.
Corinne, your sound is bad, really bad, and we can't hear you. I'm just going to ask you to probably start again.
Is it any better? Not sure what happened. Is it still bad?
Still bad. It was very good right up until this moment. Oh, try now.
Yes. So no. I'll type it in, perhaps others can.
Okay. So we're then going to move to Mike O'Brien, and we'll circle back to you, Corinne.
Yeah, try to get back to Kate, Corinne.
So,
ladies and gentlemen,
yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight you've heard from the four contestants, and we've all articulated our vision on these particular issues and subjects. And I think there's some clear differences, but I think what came out commonly is that there's a deep love in amongst the four of us for the arts, culture, heritage components of our community and the people that are engaged in it. I take a little bit of a different approach, because it's critically important that these sectors are embraced and supported and funded and protected. But it has to be done in the bigger picture of an overall fiscal budget. We have a lot of things that we have to do, and we're asked to go in many, many, many directions. Every day I get asked if I could guide the city in a different direction, and I don't even vote. So, but those are the challenges that we have. So I think there has been a difference. 5 years ago, as I mentioned at the beginning, this very group at the debate I had 5 years ago asked, and I committed that I would be more supportive of the arts and cultural community, and I have been, and council has been, and I think the results are there. They're tangible. Some of the public art that's been embraced and pursued and put in place. Some of the programs that we've put in place. Some of the funding that we've done. The arts in the art in the field. I've got the wrong word, but the artists in residence, the artists at Odell Park. I think the communities really appreciated and embraced that. So these are things that we got to do. But as I said at a debate a week ago, we can't be too hard on ourselves. This is a wonderful, green, caring, progressive city, and every year we're getting better at addressing some of the things that need to be addressed. So sometimes just sit back. We're renowned across Canada for our artisans, our culture, our academics, our athletics. We're renowned and really respected. And the arts and culture community in our community is very well respected across Canada. And we're going to do as best we can to keep that going. So at the end, you asked me 5 years ago. I've done my best. The council has delivered. And based on that, I would kindly and humbly ask for your support to be your mayor again on May the 10th. And we'll keep these files moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. And Corinne, I'm going to ask to see if your sound is improved. No, sorry.
That's strange.
I didn't touch anything. As far as I know.
Corinne, you may want to sign out and sign back in, and it may, in fact, help you there. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask Kate Rogers to speak.
Yeah, thank you. So, our city in the development of its arts policy back in 2003 recognized what the arts contribute to our city. It recognized at that point in time, which was almost 20 years ago, that the arts are more than just a nicety. They're more than just peripheral and something that we find funding for, that we give the scraps to. We made a real commitment at that time with the arts policy, and we made a further commitment with the culture plan. And it is the role of our city to follow through on those commitments the way that we do in other areas, with support in the budget. No one, we don't ask for the arts. It's a very frugal sector, and a very little goes a very long way because of the creative nature of the people who work in that sector. But it is important. We recognized in 2003 the importance of supporting the arts for the economic benefits that the arts bring to our city, for the community building that they bring, for the creation, the social cohesion that the arts bring to the city, and for the arts and for arts development, for the way that it makes our community a more vibrant, vital, livable space. Our tourism sector, which is such an economic driver in our city, is very much built around the culture, the arts and culture sector. And I actually, when I first ran for council, one of the reasons that I ran was because I knew that our city wasn't capitalizing on all of the wonderful arts and culture artists and arts organizations and all of the arts and culture features in our city. I knew that if the city embraced that, that we could really enrich our city and enrich our offerings. And we have done a lot. We have done so much, actually, that our one staff person doesn't have the capacity to do all and grab all of the opportunities that could come our way with arts and culture. I feel that our city could do more. I don't feel that it needs to be a hugely expensive endeavor. I think that really what it is just a commitment to saying that this is important for economic reasons, for community building, for social cohesion, and for community development. We know how important these things are, and we're going to continue to support them. We're going to be knowledgeable about them. We're going to know this file the way that we know other files. And when we set our economic vision 2020, one of the growth sectors was the culture sector. So it was recognized then the opportunity in this sector. And I feel that this is one of many, many examples that we just need to grab onto it as a city and realize it to its full benefit.
Thank you very much. Corinne, we're going to try for you again.
Oh,
It's
is it any
working.
better?
It's working.
It is?
Yes.
Awesome. So I chose to run because I saw, and what I heard from other people was that the city was just moving in a wrong direction, and the people weren't being listened to. I also see, and we hear about the inequality. Certainly all winter we saw homeless people, and we're still continuing to see them. And I do believe that we need a performing arts center, but what I really do think about is, if we keep building things for those of us at the top, and a great deal of our tax dollars and our money goes into the top, then there's nothing left for those organizations and agencies that need it at the bottom. So, for instance, the John Howard Society and the homeless shelters have not been given much money on the table. So last year, I believe, was the first year that they ever received any. And so we do have to be to recognize that, yes, we all work hard, and we all, we can build things that build the city more and bring people in and increase tourism and those sorts of things. But we have to recognize that we just can't go steamrolling ahead and build middle to upper income apartment buildings and developments and think that we're not going to create a housing crisis. We can't keep building on the downtown Platte without worrying, without thinking about, we're living in a climate crisis. We can't build on densification without knowing we're still in a pandemic and we have no idea what's going to happen with vaccinations. I just think that some of the decisions need to be much better thought out. The NBX grounds, yes, it needs some development, but I'm not in favor of doing development before there is much more engagement than just the few people that were. So that is why I'm running for mayor. And I am hoping, of course, as everybody here, that people will vote for us. And if they feel the same way we do, then that's the person that will go in. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And Drew, you get the last word.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad, Corinne, you got to speak. I really believe I have to highlight these things. That's something I've observed. Both Kate and Mike have, when they speak of accomplishments and things that the city has done, it has been on the city's action. And I think that is why, going forward, we have to be willing to take action on those things that we normally haven't, like housing, like homelessness, like the heritage, and our infrastructure projects. I commend Kate and Mike they've done tremendous things to make this city a great space. I feel, like Corinne, we're leaving our neighbors behind in some regards. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, I don't know this person, I don't know. We are all living in this city, and we have to look at our neighbors as people of value. And even if they may not be of the same socioeconomic class, or we wouldn't normally associate with these people, they're people. They have to be treated with dignity and respect. We have got to get past, well, it's not our problem, it's somebody else's problem. We have power. We have to use the power we have. And in the cases where we need to take action, that's what we have to be willing to do. The things Corinne has spoken of, the Fredericton exhibition grounds and these other areas, these are things where we have to say to ourselves, they are pivotal that we get it right. And it's the same, I think, with these infrastructure projects. We're at a point of generational commitment where we have to say, is the future for Fredericton going to have these infrastructure projects? Is it going to have the housing? Is it going to have those things we need so we can all live here and live here reasonably well? That's what we're looking at for this choice in this election.
So thank you. And thank you to all of you for participating in tonight's event. For those of you who are listening on YouTube, that's it for this evening. But I do want to thank all the candidates for their time, for their energy, for their ideas, and some novel ideas that we had that were actually spoken about around the table this evening. Merci à tous qui nous avez rejoints sur YouTube, et merci à la Fredericton Arts Alliance qui a de nouveau organisé un forum sur la politique culturelle pendant la période électorale. I trust that the candidates have given all of you much to consider as you make your decision, the decision of casting your vote. And a reminder to all of you that municipal election day in New Brunswick is Monday, May 10th. Polling stations will be open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. if you've not voted in the advanced polls or at your returning station. Merci et bonne soirée. And now I'd like to turn the platform over to Katie Fitzrandolph for the final words.
Hi, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you so much for your, as usual, an excellent job of keeping it on track and making the candidates feel very welcome. I also like to thank the candidates for participating and giving us their views on what the arts mean to the city. And I'd like to thank everybody who watched the forum on YouTube and who submitted questions via the chat program. Oh, start my video. Okay. Yes. As I was saying, thank you, Suzanne, and thank you to the candidates. And thank you for the participants on YouTube. I should say that this forum is recorded and will be online shortly. And there will be a link to the forum on our website, frederictonartsalliance.ca. So if people missed it tonight, or if you want to promote your participation, there's still a chance. And that really is the end. Thank everybody for their interest and their participation. And next time there's an election, we'll be doing this again. Thank you and good night.
Thank you all.
Good night, everybody. That was enjoyable. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.